Welcome to another episode of Daily Dose of Anime Recaps, and today we'll be looking at the first 4 episodes of the anime Parallel World Pharmacy, an isekai with a wholesome twist that also includes some real-world knowledge, putting itself in the same company as Reincarnated as a Slime and Ascendance of a Bookworm. If you liked those anime, you will surely like this one too. And if you like this video, let us know by hitting the like button and subscribing to our channel. In our world, somewhere in Japan, it's late at night, but a light is still on in one of the rooms at the T University, where Professor Kenji Yakutani is still working on the report on his medical findings. His assistant interrupts him to introduce him to some businessman or another, but Kenji barely looks up from his work. In the early hours of the morning, the report is finished, and he does one last job in the lab before he can take a break. He can't find his recorder, so he simply writes down the time he started and finished the lab work on his arm with a marker before returning to his office. He looks at a picture of his younger sister, who he lost in childhood to an incurable disease, his reason to keep working in the medical field. He sets a short alarm and takes a nap on the couch in his office. That is where his assistant finds him the next morning, still on the couch, cold to the touch. Kenji, however, opens his eyes to the sight of a pink-haired maid looking over him. He has woken up in a beautiful mansion of a wealthy family, as Pharma de Medici, which his maid Charlotte, nicknamed Lota by Pharma when they were kids, has to explain to him. She doesn't find his apparent amnesia weird, for Pharma has just been struck by lightning and must be feeling a bit disoriented. Pharma tries getting up, but he feels nauseous, and 2 glowing symbols appear on his arms. Lota exclaims that they are the mark of Panactios, the god of medicine, and she doesn't listen when Pharma tries to explain that they are just the Lichtenberg figure, a scar left by a lightning strike on a human body. He clearly has his memories from his previous life, as well as the note he left for himself on his arm, but it comes off quickly. Acting disoriented from his injury, Pharma gets Lota to introduce him to the mansion and his family, so she takes him to the portraits of de Medici family members. The family are all aristocrats from the Saint-Fleuve Empire. In fact, they are the royal pharmaciens. His father, Bruno de Medici, being the Archduke and chief royal pharmacist to the Empress herself, as well as the president of the Imperial School of Pharmacy. His wife and Pharma's mother, Beatrice, shares her portrait with his younger sister, Blanche, while his older brother, Paul, has his own portrait, but he's currently abroad at the Novolo College of Medicine. Most interestingly, his family practices the divine arts, which is a collection of magical feats and is considered a mark of nobility. Pharma is worried he can't practice the divine arts anymore, but Lota reassures him that he has shown affinity for water, and it will all come back to him once he recovers. He just has to visualize water in his head. Back alone in his room, Pharma starts experimenting with magic. He shoots a spray of water out of the window, so powerful he is nearly knocked back, but he manages to control and stop it. He can create water by imagining the structure of the water molecule in his head, so he tries creating other substances like sugar and different kinds of metal, but he finds he can only create pure substances, not alloys or compound materials. He also finds out that what his left hand creates, his right hand can eliminate and make disappear. Pharma heads to the library before dinner, because Lota warned him that his father likes to quiz him during their meals. He realizes that not only can he remember things from his previous life, he can also remember things from Pharma's life, which is very useful when his father quizzes him on the composition and making of a salve used to treat electrical burns, a salve his father made himself to treat Pharma's wounds. During dinner, Pharma also notices that his younger sister can also control the water in her cup, meaning that affinity for the different elements must run in the family. The next day, he has a divine arts lesson with Eleanor, Ellen for short. He is very polite and attentive, which Ellen notices and calls him out for it, but Pharma just explains it as minor confusion caused by the lightning strike. He gets her to explain the magic system to him, which she obliges. She explains that the divine arts come from guardian deities, like Pankiatos, who is the guardian deity of Pharma's family, and Hydranthios, who is Ellen's guardian deity. She explains that there are 5 attributes to the divine arts: fire, water, earth, air, and none, and each of those is divided further into positive and negative attributes. After being asked about it, Ellen explains that none is technically an attribute of the divine arts, but it hasn't been seen in at least 300 years. Pharma also asks, what does it mean if someone can create any kind of substance? But Ellen shoots him down, saying that such a thing is impossible. However, if someone existed with that kind of power, they would either be a god or a monster. That little bombshell shuts down the explanation, so they move on to the practice part of their tutorship. Pharma forgot his wand at home, though he didn't even know he needed to bring one. So Ellen lends him hers after demonstrating the Spear of Water spell. Pharma visualizes the water in his head, and before he can even say the incantation, the wand he's holding spouts so much water into the air, landing in a nearby lake, that it's hard for Ellen to even approach him, and he has to shut it off by force. Panicking that Pharma has just spent his lifetime supply of magical energy, she hands him a divinometer, a silver wand in the shape of 2 coiled snakes, and a crystal gem on top. As soon as she hands it over to Pharma, the gem glows white for a moment before shattering, making Ellen recoil away from Pharma. She tells him that he just achieved a colorless capacity break with both positive and negative attributes, something that shouldn't be possible, because no divine arts practitioner has ever exceeded the divinometer like this before. She instructs him to never grasp a divinometer in front of anyone ever again, and their lesson ends there. Ellen's glasses fell off in her hurry to get away from Pharma, so he dutifully escorts her back to the estate. While taking a break at a bench, Pharma shows her a trick from our world to see without her glasses by making very small holes with her fingers and looking through them. While he is adjusting his fingers, however, he notices that parts of Ellen are now suddenly glowing blue in his eyes, in particular her eyes and her middle finger. He asks if her finger hurts, and she says she had knocked it against something this morning, so it still hurts. The finger, having been correctly diagnosed, now turns from a blue glow to a white glow. As they are about to get up and start their walk back to the mansion again, Ellen notices Pharma doesn't have a shadow, which makes her so scared she runs away from him and the mansion in a panic. The next morning, Pharma is taking notes on what he can remember from our world, while examining the service staff at their mansion, noticing and diagnosing their medical issues. At breakfast, his father notifies him that Ellen has gotten a fever and is so delirious that she wants to quit her job as Pharma's tutor. Since this is unacceptable, he gives Pharma a potion to cure her fever and instructs him to deliver it to her. Ellen greets him at her home in a full suit of armor and doesn't trust that the potion from his father or any of the medicine Pharma made himself aren't poisoned. Pharma gets her to let her guard down enough by explaining that he has no intention of harming her and still wants her to be his tutor. He has also brought her blue flowers, in case she doesn't want to tutor him anymore. They happen to be Ellen's favorite flowers, so she agrees to continue teaching him the divine arts, even though she believes he is the incarnation of God Panactios himself. The next day, Pharma continues practicing his special gifts and flexing his knowledge of medicine by creating small gifts for the servants of his household, even if they're little things like dry skin or a sore throat. The servants are pleasantly surprised by this because they're not used to receiving gifts from the family they serve. Medicine is also usually reserved for the higher classes, while the lower classes, like themselves, usually have to help themselves using common knowledge and superstition. This horrifies Pharma, as his little sister back home died because they didn't have the right medicine to cure her. At breakfast, his little sister from this world is missing at the table. His dad, while coughing, explains that she has chickenpox and is not to be approached for 2 weeks until the disease passes one way or another. She is only allowed occasional visitors from the people who have already had chickenpox, although only to deliver her meals. Pharma finds it interesting that this world also understands immunity and that there are rare cases of reinfection even with immunity. But he can't just sit there and do nothing because he may lose his little sister a second time. He creates a simple medicine for her and visits her on her meal, getting her to take her medicine in a sweet macaroon, but only after she promises to not tell Dad about it. She promises and makes a speedy recovery within a few days. Later that day, Bruno summons Pharma to his office, where he's getting ready to make a house call for Her Majesty, the Empress. Pharma notices his dad's cough, but doesn't have the chance to diagnose him in their rush to get ready. At the Empress's palace, they are greeted by the head court physician, who explains that Empress Elizabeth II is in dire condition and that her lungs are worsening by the day. After greeting her by her bedside, Bruno takes some blood from a cut he makes on her palm, putting it in a vial of clear liquid and performing divine arts over the vial until the vial starts to glow. Pharma remarks that this must be the way diagnosis works in this world. After the diagnosis is made, they talk to a man near a window who consults an instrument in his hands and explains that the stars look unfortunate and that the Empress may not last until the next evening. Back at the Empress's Empress's bedside. Bruno creates an anesthetic for her to breathe, but he refuses to tell her the truth about her diagnosis. Pharma, horrified by the arrival of her son, Prince Louis, examines the Empress, diagnosing her with tuberculosis, or the White Death. He steels himself and declares to the Empress that he knows of a medicine that will cure her. The older men in the room are appalled by this and object, but the Empress, a former practitioner of the divine arts herself, knows when she can trust someone. So she lets Pharma create his medicine for her, barricading the door with layers of ice. Pharma makes notes on the different compounds he will need to create a medicine that tuberculosis won't have a chance to adapt to. Before he can make any significant progress, his notes are shot from his hand by an ice spear his father created as he bursts into the room behind him. Without uttering a word, Pharma creates a wall of ice between himself and Bruno without an incantation, which snaps his father from his destructive rage. He finds the notebook Pharma has been taking notes in, finding the knowledge he's been writing down from his previous world, and Pharma explains the notes as a dream he had while he was recovering from the lightning strike, given to him by their guardian deity, Panactios. Pharma tries to compromise with his father, saying that Bruno can give the medicine to the Empress without losing his standing and reputation. But Bruno says that the medicine Pharma makes is his to give. He pauses, looks at the boy creating the medicine, and questions him whether he really is his son. Pharma replies that he considers himself to be. Back in the Empress's chambers, Pharma presents a small handheld microscope he has made and explains the bacteria that causes the White Death, which fascinates the entire court. Knowing that his new medicine may be seen as untrustworthy, he prepares 2 goblets of it, one for the Empress and one for himself. He drinks his goblet first, proving that it's harmless, and so begins a dying Empress's 6 months of recovery. Pharma gives the same kind of medicine to Bruno, who has also been showing the early symptoms of tuberculosis. A couple of months after that night, Bruno explains to Pharma that he has been getting requests to make a medicine that cures the White Death available to other pharmacologists. But Pharma explains that he can currently only create it using the divine arts. Therefore, it can't be made by just anyone. Bruno tells him not to worry about it, because he just made an excuse that Pharma's knowledge was a gift from Panactios himself and cannot be replicated so easily by anyone else. Pharma pauses at this and reveals that it's his goal to figure out how to make the medicine the regular way so that anyone can make and use it. Bruno is impressed by his line of thinking, but advises him to keep it to himself because it would be considered heresy to many other pharmacologists. During one of his visits to the Empress to give her her tuberculosis medicine, Pharma is pulled to the side by a Lord Noah to discuss what he would like in return for saving the Empress's life. But he stays humble and explains that he would only like to open a pharmacy and make his medicine more widely available. At the Thanksgiving ceremony a few more months later, after the Empress has regained her health and strength, she gives Bruno the territory of Marseille, which is known for its fields of medicinal herbs. In the same ceremony, she calls over Pharma, promoting him from an apprentice to an official royal pharmacist, and giving him permission to open a pharmacy in the capital. Ellen and Lota decide to help with the planning and the running of the pharmacy. All it needs is a name. Pharma muses to himself that he always wanted to deal with customers instead of researching in his office, and that opening up a pharmacy has always been his dream. He just didn't think it would be a parallel world pharmacy. The foreman overhears this, passes it forward, and so it is named the Parallel World Pharmacy. Having an assistant in Ellen and an errand girl in Lota, all Pharma needs is an accountant to handle the business and finance parts of the pharmacy. So he returns to the De Medici mansion, where the servants are lamenting the retirement of the estate's accountant, Sir Cedric. Pharma takes note of this and approaches his father, asking his father for permission to hire Sir Cedric himself, and Bruno chuckles, saying how fortunate it is that Pharma showed up to hire Sir Cedric on the day he was dismissed from the De Medici estate. Before Pharma can call him out on his generosity, Bruno presents Pharma with a chest of gold as the starting capital for the pharmacy. Will Pharma be able to help people like he always wished he would? Not just by creating medicine like he did back in his old world, but also meeting and helping the people that will be taking his medicine? Will he be able to make a name for himself, despite his young age and seeming inexperience? If you've already watched the anime, then let us know the answers in the comments. If you'd like us to review more anime like this, then like the video. And if you want to see more recaps like this one, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to know when the next video comes out. And don't worry, if our daily dose of anime recaps isn't enough, the channel holds countless other recaps for you to catch up on, if you haven't seen them already.